You're tuning in to the Bueno Power Hour podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Bueno Power Hour podcast. I am your host, Arthur Bueno, and yes, we are doing another episode of In the Scene. I definitely am having lots of fun talking about these bands and sort of my attachment, my relationship to them. And it's been quite interesting kind of going back and listening to all these demos. Before we kind of, talk about this band in particular, what I've been doing on this specific project, this In the Scene project, was try to reach out to social media who have been so graciously helpful on sending me some files on some bands that I have been impacted by and have witnessed existing here in the scene. In that time period I was living in Fresno, and it was kind of strange. It was kind of strange that I listened to all this kind of stuff and sort of understanding how insane these bands were and how insane they how much of an impact they had in my life. So it's been great. There's quite a bit of bands here that I'm still kind of looking for, and I'm looking for demos. I'm looking for all this kind of music so that I can actually showcase it to the world and let people know that the Central Valley had a great scene, We've had so many great bands coming around at that time. In the smallest of towns, they would freaking just do it up. You know what I mean? It's just so freaking beautiful. So I loved every part of the scene. I loved how giving and welcoming it was for me, at least. They've shown me quite a bit of bands that have existed and have, recommended me, outside of the scene, that have been influenced to play the style of music in the scene. You know what I mean? It's crazy how much of it has changed, and though that I've been gone from the Central Valley for so many years, people who are still part of that continue to create work that is definitely pushing some boundaries. I feel, at least, people are not doing this body of work that we would think that it's just like, whoa, why are you like playing this kind of shit? You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure people felt that way when metal came around. Excuse me. So I'm actually recording this a little earlier than usual. I usually would record these podcasts at night, but I got off work early because we are in kind of a snowstorm, sort of. It's actually kind of nice because I actually get a chance to just chill, and I just got done eating lunch, and I'm drinking some seltzer right now. That's why I'm kind of burping like bleh. You'll probably hear that throughout the whole episode, so excuse me for that. Polar Springs, man. You got to get the triple berry sparkling flavor. It's delicious. Oh, anyway. So the last episode I sort of tapped in onto a couple of members' projects outside of Dead Elizabeth. It was in the last episode. And the guitarist and singer did have projects outside of Dead Elizabeth. Unfortunately, Dead Elizabeth, from what I understand, only had 4 songs out there, and I'm sure there's someone out there that had played or that have like demo recordings of it. I'm also gonna probably showcase the band before Dead Elizabeth, which was Once We Were, that was the beginnings of what Dead Elizabeth became. You know what I mean? But we're not gonna be talking about that right now. I'm gonna be talking about one specific band that, to be honest, I didn't really have much history of. I never really knew them or seen them play, but I've been envious of others who have had that chance. And this band's called Anderson Films. So Anderson Films is a project that was done with Cameron and another individual that was actually the mastermind of the whole project. I guess Cameron was just the vocalist for it, and I don't know how involved he was in the project. And it was cool because there have been, from what I understand, there have been a couple of people that were part of the project live. And one of them being Cole Thornton. He's a musician based out of Fresno, and I think he's still living in Chicago right now. He was actually the guitarist for the band Tree Wizard. Tree Wizard is a math rock instrumental band out of Fresno that I played alongside with. I think I remember playing alongside with a long time ago. But Cole used to be part of that band, as well as Nick from Dead Elizabeth. He actually played a couple of live shows there, and it was cool because, to kind of sidetrack here, this is sort of what I'm kind of talking about in regards to how these scenes all came together and tried their best to support each other. There was a point where people were really accepting of the fact that indie and metal sort of had a great relationship, especially in Fresno. You had your softies, and then you had your aggressive like folk there. You know what I mean? And it was cool because they all kind of understood each other and played music together, in these shows. They may not agree on like influences and stuff or whatnot, but in my time, people were kind of uncomfortable listening to different genres of music. It was kind of weird for these people, But it was a time where people were really getting influenced by different things and sort of trying to at least piece all this kind of stuff together. And that was fucking cool, man. It was fucking cool. I loved everything about that. But anyway, yeah. So you had support of these folks who were playing the style of music, whether if you were into metal or not. They really dug it, And the Anderson Films, to me, was one of those bands. So they had 2 releases. One was, I guess, their full-length record, which was Nervous Sleight of Sleepwalker. That was actually, I don't know how long ago that was released. But that was a really interesting record for me because I didn't actually listen to that record until before the Removed EP, and it's that 4-song EP that they had released. They had better production. The full-length album would have been. I would have found out about that later on in my life, and recently someone had uploaded this body of work onto Bandcamp, and I was able to listen to all the music. So I had finally just recently listened to everything that Anderson Films had recorded, that had documented. And it's strange because, it wasn't until now that I had found that these recordings kind of existed. A lot of hard drives have crashed, and people have not. People like myself have been trying to retrieve this like documentation, and I have part of it. I have part of this documentation, which is really, really, really nice. So Anderson Films is certainly one of those bands that inspired me to play a certain way. Their way of constructing parts of songs were really emotional for me, and very, very. I don't know what it is. I was always taken on a ride, and sort of I could sit down and listen to a story being told, not just lyrically but emotionally. And I'm a big fan of that. Definitely a big fan of that. So yeah, I guess I'll just talk about sort of my attachment to it. I think when I first found out about Anderson Films, it was actually later on when I found that they've broken up and they're not doing music anymore. Someone had this record, and it was the Removed EP. It was a 4-song EP, and I maybe had found it through MySpace. I'm not sure. I think that thinking about it right now. So when you go into, well, at the time when you were an avid music listener and you were really part of the underground, you would actually try to find these bands online. They would have shitty like Angel Fire or Homestead accounts. It was hard to sort of afford and maintain a website, let alone learn how to create one, because sort of the format of how websites were created at the time was pretty difficult. You got to learn how to code. So there was a dude named Mathar who had a band called Most Inspirational, which I'll be talking about them in a later like in the scene episode. They were a pinnacle of like what I became as a musician, one of them at least. He had Most Inspirational had this website, and it was really done up, well made. And what was cool about these bands is that they would like attach links to other bands that they're affiliated with, like sort of sister bands of some sort. So they had like bands like Atari Champ and this other band, I think they were called like something Autumn. I don't even remember, but I remember reading Anderson Films, and they didn't have a website, but they had kind of a mention that they were a part of them. They were a part of that interest in bands, that I guess that camaraderie of like these are the bands that we played with and we love, we definitely respect. And it was crazy because like a lot of these bands, a lot of these like bands that were listed in the Most Inspirational website I just didn't even know about, but Anderson Films for some reason was a mystery. I was like, okay, who is this band? I like the name. The name was really cool. And it could probably be like part of Pamela Anderson's sex tape. I don't know. I'm not even sure. But I think later on, when I had copped the 4-song EP, I was amazed at the fact that this music was it existed. You know what I mean? It was so interesting how the fact that certain these parts of the way how the guitar parts were written, the vocals, the choice of vocals, the production, it was just so raw. You know what I mean? You don't really hear indie rock bands playing really like, high gain, guitar. And then, on sort of the prettier parts, they would go and play, all clean. It was almost as if like there's like sort of a metal element to that. And it may be so because, these guys were probably playing some really intense shit prior to, making a band such as Anderson Films. So, I guess what we'll do is we'll go ahead and go into one of the songs here. I'm gonna actually introduce this song. Let me see. I think it's called Semi-Conservative. That's probably what it is. Semi-Conservative. And yeah, man. This is one of those like ballads for me at least. So yeah, let's go check this out. This song is called Semi-Conservative by Anderson Films. And that was Semi-Conservative by Anderson Films. It was off the Nervous Sleight of Sleepwalker. I don't know if it's Slight or Slate of Sleepwalker. But that this was a record that I found later on, before right after I had gotten a copy of the first of the 4 songs from the Removed EP of the band. So yeah, this was something really special to me. This band, just because there was so much emotion behind it, so much. I mean, it's pretty dramatic in a way, but I love that shit. You know what I mean? I fucking love it. I love how dramatic and sexy the sound was, especially on the next song I'll be introducing here in a bit. I used to I used to get high listening to this shit. I don't know. It was one of those things where it made me feel, it made me feel a certain way. There was just something special about how Cameron delivered those vocals and how driving some of those guitar parts were. Even that bass guitar, that bass guitar really rode those parts. And fuck, man, I mean, like, it was just so cool, how well they constructed this shit. You know what I mean? It was just so interesting how much emotion and how they really, at least for me, they really thought about those guitar parts. They really thought about how they could combine all these ideas together. And again, I used to just like get high or just get drunk and just like sit in my room by myself and sort of just listen. Just listen to these songs and try to construct it in such a way in my mind how I would respond to it. It was one of those bands that I was able to kind of understand like what they're doing, but at the same time, like I never really tried to like play their songs. I've always was one of those types of people that, especially as a fan, I've always wanted to kind of like, okay, I want to sort of get after that style of sound and sort of construct it in my own way. And I certainly did that. I definitely did that. I definitely had I had given myself sort of that that time to kind of take it all in and sort of let that influence sort of come out of me naturally. And it definitely did. I can see myself sort of twirling around those types of notes, those same notes, and those aggressive parts in the music that I even play today. It was just so cool how well these songs were constructed and how well they were able to kind of put everything together. It was just amazing. You know what I mean? It was amazing. And me and my friend Mike Adame, we used to listen to this shit driving, and just like fanboy it. You know what I mean? Like it was so good. I remembered like my friend Colby. He used to laugh at me because I was listening to this stuff, man. I'm like, fuck that, dude. This shit is good. You know what I mean? I fucking love this shit. It was my favorite fucking band, dude. I loved it. I actually liked this band over, at one point, over Most Inspirational because there was such an element of of that sexiness that I was so I was driven to that, like that was so attractive to me, and they just did it, man. They just fucking did it for me. I'm sorry, like I'm like speaking, like I'm not probably not making any sense, but when a band really just does it for you, you just you kind of just listen to it over and over and over again, and it never gets old, In fact, like a lot of these bands that came out at that time, they've aged quite well for me. And I think that's what's so cool about this is that Anderson Films, I can play that to anybody and they'll probably get it. It didn't have commercial appeal or anything like that. It was just one of those bands was just like, you knew that their intention was very, very like very pure, especially writing these songs. It was just so nice. I would love to interview Cameron and the dude that was the mastermind of this project. If anybody is listening that's part of that scene or was part of our scene, I know those guys personally, just like leave a comment below, man. I'm definitely like down to kind of talk to him about this record and see if there's any way I can sort of cop any kind of demos or footage or anything of the like that will be that I just want this shit documented. It deserves notoriety, much like all these other bands I'm going to be talking about later in the series. So yeah. I don't know, I'm just so enthusiastic about it. I don't even know the history about any of this band. I just know that my experience listening to them constantly, it was just freaking beautiful, man. It was just beautiful. But yeah, I would listen to this band quite a bit to kind of get my own take onto it and sort of find my own way and using these types of like guitar parts and such. But as far as I knew it, the band had already disbanded and did their own thing. Well, anyway, so before I go into this next song, so this was actually the very first song I think I've learned about Anderson Films. Everything is kind of becoming a little bit more clear now, but I remember listening to this specific song because it was so sexy, and for good reason. I heard from Cole that this song is about giving a woman head. And I found that quite funny because it kind of makes sense. If you listen to it, it definitely makes sense. The sort of the journey throughout the whole song is you can definitely tell that this is whoever is like initiating this process, is definitely going in. It was just funny as fuck, man. But what I liked about it the most really was the construction, like how they constructed the ideas and sort of these cool little like jazzy parts, This record had better production, definitely had better production, and things sounded a lot more clearer. It just seemed like the ideas were drawn out better, not as aggressive, just fucking pretty shit, man. So let's actually get into that song. This one is called, man, I don't even remember some of these song names, man. This song is called it's Verbena. That's what it's called. Verbena. That's the song. Verbena. So yeah, let's go and give this one a listen as well. was Anderson Films' Verbena off the Removed EP. And I still I use this song as a template for some of the songs that I do want to write, especially slow songs and sexy songs like that. So, yeah, I mean, just listening to this stuff and kind of going back in time and remembering how I felt, the nostalgia behind it, it's just cool, man. It's just awesome. I definitely miss this period of my life because there was a lot going on with me musically and emotionally, and I was able to kind of tap into a lot of those emotions through my playing, through any kind of art that I was trying to pursue. This band would actually be crucial into how I look at photographs as well, and it just was interesting how like all this kind of came around, came about, and how they are still relevant into my life today. So to the guys who were participants of this project, I want to say thank you for providing us such a beautiful collection of songs, and just being able to kind of experiencing it, having it be documented in such a way to the best of your ability. There may have been a lot of limitations during the recording processes of the first record and on this EP as well, but you have something that exists, and we can reflect back and talk about how we felt about it, whether if it was negative or positive. You know what I mean? I remembered actually reading one comment on this particular. It was in MySpace actually. This comment, and it said, me and my girl fuck on these songs. We still fuck on these songs. I'm like, dang. There's quite a relationship with this in this music when it comes to sex. But it was sexy. It was definitely sexy. It was a very sexy like type of sound, and no one was really doing it at the time. You know what I'm saying? That was what's so cool about it. It was so fucking original. Everybody was doing punk, hardcore, metal. The indie rock kids were doing, their chorus, verse, chorus, just playing chords. But these guys were doing something so original. It's just fucking insane, dude. So fucking insane. And I just can't believe that this didn't get enough notoriety. And it's sad that they didn't have, a longer lifespan in order for me to kind of have the chance to sort of witness it. But hey, what are you going to do? Anyway, so that sort of ends our episode of the Bueno Power Hour podcasts in the scene segment. I will be going further along with this as I start collecting more demos and maybe even talking about some of my own music that I had put out at the time. But yeah, this is quite interesting. I love it, dude. I love every minute of this, and it's really bringing me back into basics, and it's actually helping me kind of improve on my writing as I start going back into some of this music and sort of going in and sort of reevaluating how I played and how I play now. So yeah, if you guys like this episode, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you want videos every week, hit that subscribe button as well. Don't forget to hit that bell to get notifications of these uploads. And that pretty much does it, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next episode.